Maya Brooks was flying her small ship through space when everything changed in one moment, and white light filled every corner around her. She could not see anything at all, and then the light faded away slowly, and she found herself standing in a huge room that looked like nothing she had ever seen before in her entire life, and the walls were made of something, light liquid silver that moved and showed pictures of places and people she did not know, and the floor beneath her boots looked like it was made from actual starlight that had been turned solid somehow, and it felt strange under her feet. She looked up and saw the throne, and sitting on that throne was the most beautiful and terrifying woman Maya had ever seen, and this had to be the Empress that all the reports talked about back on Earth, and her name was Keleth. And she ruled over an empire so vast that humans could barely understand how big it really was, and the Empress had long silver hair that fell down past her shoulders, and her eyes were like two moons shining in the darkness of space, and she wore robes that seemed to be made from pieces of galaxies and nebulas, all woven together into cloth. But what made Maya freeze in place was the dragon, and it was coiled around the throne like a giant snake made of darkness and purple fire, and its scales shimmered with colors that changed every time Maya blinked, and the creature was massive, and each time it breathed out, small wisps of cosmic fire curled through the air, and its eyes were ancient and intelligent. And when those eyes looked at Maya, she felt like the dragon could see every thought she had ever had and every secret she had ever kept. The Empress stood up from her throne, and her voice filled the entire room when she spoke, and she said that Maya had been selected and chosen for something important. And Maya tried to stay calm like her military training had taught her, and she asked what she had been selected for exactly, and the Empress explained that Maya was going to teach her daughter what it meant to be mortal and to be human. Empress said that her daughter had lived for 3,000 years in these halls, and had been kept safe and protected from all the cruel and dangerous things in the universe, but now war was coming, and the daughter needed to understand what humans called humanity, and what it meant to fight and struggle and live, knowing that death could come at any moment, and only then could the daughter survive what was about to happen. Before Maya could say anything or ask any questions, a girl stepped out from behind one of the tall pillars of frozen light, and this had to be the princess, and her name was Leora, and she looked so different from her mother in almost every way, and where the Empress Keleth was cold and commanding like winter itself, the princess Leora seemed softer and warmer, like spring trying to grow in a place that was always frozen, and her eyes were violet instead of silver, and her features were gentle and curious. Instead of sharp and calculatingly, there walked toward Maya with careful steps, like she was afraid Maya might disappear if she moved too fast, and she whispered that Maya was a human, and that she was so small and so fragile-looking, and the Empress replied that yes, humans were small and fragile, but they had conquered half the known galaxy in just 200 years, and that was nothing compared to how long other species had been trying to do the same thing. The Empress explained that humans live such short lives compared to the immortal elves, and yet they burned so bright and accomplished so much in their brief time, and that was exactly why Leora needed to learn from Maya and understand what made humans so special and so dangerous and so determined to survive. Against all odds, Maya looked into Leora's violet eyes, and she saw something that none of the intelligence reports back on Earth had ever mentioned, and it was loneliness, and it was pure and deep and aching, and Maya realized that this princess had lived for 3,000 years surrounded by people who would live forever, and yet she had never really connected with any of them, and she had been alone in a way that Maya could barely imagine. Maya asked how long she would have to stay here in this strange palace with its liquid walls and starlight floors, and the Empress smiled in a way that was mysterious and knowing, and she said that Maya would stay until the lesson was learned, and until her daughter understood what it truly meant to care about something that could die, and that would not live forever like she would. The dragon shifted slightly, and its scales made a sound like distant thunder, and Maya wondered what this creature thought about all of this, and whether it would protect the princess from her, or whether it saw Maya as some kind of threat to be watched carefully. And the dragon's eyes never left her, and she could feel its gaze like a weight on her shoulders. Leora came closer, and she reached out one hand like she wanted to touch Maya, but was not quite brave enough, and she asked, If humans really felt things more strongly because they knew they would die. Someday, and Maya thought about that question for a long moment, and then she nodded and said yes, and that knowing you only had a limited time made every moment feel more important and more precious. The Empress watched this exchange with those moon-like eyes, and Maya could not tell if she approved or if this was all part of some bigger plan that Maya could not see yet, and the room felt heavy with expectation and possibility and the beginning of something that would change everything for all of them. The weeks passed in ways that felt strange to Maya because time seemed to work differently in the palace, and she was given beautiful rooms to stay in that overlooked gardens, where flowers bloomed in colors that did not exist on Earth and had no names in any human language, and there were fountains that flowed upward instead of down, and trees that grew both roots and branches into the sky at the same time. Maya was not exactly a prisoner, but she was not exactly free either, and she could go wherever she wanted in the palace, but she could not leave, and everywhere she went, she felt the dragon watching her, and Vorithis was the dragon's name, and he had been with Leora since the moment she was born 3,000 years ago, and he was her guardian and her companion, and her free, and Vorithis could change his size whenever he wanted, and sometimes he was as big as a house and filled entire rooms with his presence, and sometimes he shrank down to be as small as a bird and perched on Leora's shoulder, and he spoke rarely, but when he did speak, his voice sounded like the earth moving deep underground, and it made Maya's bones vibrate. She spent her days teaching Leora about Earth and about human history and human art and human music and all the things that made humanity special and unique, and Leora soaked it all up, like someone who had been thirsty for knowledge her entire long life, and she asked questions about everything, and she wanted to understand why humans did the things they did. Leora laughed at Maya's stories about human stubbornness and human courage and human foolishness, and when she laughed it sounded like music that had been missing from the universe for too long, and Maya found herself trying to make Leora laugh as often as possible, just to hear that sound and to see the way her violet eyes sparkled with joy. Maya knew she was in trouble when she started counting the hours until she would see Leora again, and when her heart started beating faster every time the princess entered her room, and she tried to push those feelings down and ignore them, but they only grew stronger with each passing day. One evening, Maya was alone in the library, which was a massive spiraling tower where books floated in the air and organized themselves according to whatever the reader was thinking about, and Vorithis found her there, and he had made himself large again, and his presence filled the space around her. The dragon said that Maya looked at Leora differently than other people did, and Maya did not pretend that she did not understand what he meant, because there was no point in lying to a creature that had lived for thousands of years and could probably see right through any deception. Maya said carefully that she meant no disrespect to the princess, and Vorithis laughed, and his laugh sounded like thunder wrapped in something soft. And he said he did not care about respect at all, and what he cared about was Leora's safety, and Maya was a danger to that safety. Maya felt her heart sink, and she said that she would never hurt Leora, and Vorithis agreed. She would not hurt the princess with any weapon or with violence, but that was not the kind of danger he was talking about. And he explained that mortals loved differently than immortals did, because mortals knew their time was short, and so they loved with desperation and intensity. Said that dragons bonded once and absolutely and forever, and that when a dragon chose a mate, it was a binding that could never be undone, and Leora had started to look at Maya the way young dragons looked at their chosen one before they understood what they were getting into and what it would mean. Maya felt cold inside, and she said that Leora was a princess, and Maya was just a human soldier from a young species that had barely left its own solar system. And Vorithis interrupted her and said that was exactly the problem, because Maya was the first person in 3,000 years to see Leora as something other than an extension of her mother's power and authority. The dragon moved closer, and Maya could smell ozone and starfire on his breath, and he said that he had guarded Leora for 3,000 years against every enemy and every threat imaginable, but he did not know how to guard her against connection and against hope and against the kind of love that would break her heart, he told Maya that if Leora loved her and then Maya died the way all humans eventually died, then it would break something inside the princess that could never be fixed, and immortals did not grieve for years or decades like mortals did, and they grieved forever, and the pain never faded. Because they never forgot anything, Maya asked. What Varathus wanted her to do then? And the dragon looked at her for a long time with those ancient cosmic eyes, and he said, he did not know, and that was what frightened him most of all, because in 3,000 years he had always known what to do to keep Leora safe. He said that Maya should not make Leora love her unless she understood what she was asking the princess to sacrifice, what it would cost. And then he left, and Maya was alone among the floating books with a choice she had never wanted to make in a future she could not quite see. Maya should have known that Empress Kelith did not make mistakes, and that every choice she made was planned out thousands of steps ahead, and the truth of why Maya had really been brought here came out in a way she never expected Leora had been, practicing human negotiation skills and learning about trade agreements when one of the Empress's advisors arrived with urgent news, and his name was Wasarath, and he was an ancient elf who looked worried in a way that made Maya's stomach tighten. With fear, the Dravix Confederation had mobilized its entire fleet, and the war that the Empress had mentioned when Maya first arrived was no longer something coming in the future, and it was happening right now, and Maya was summoned to the war room. Immediately, the war room was different from anywhere else Maya had seen in the palace, and there were no beautiful decorations or floating lights, and instead, there were holographic displays showing ship movements and battle projections and tactical analyses, and in the center of it all stood Empress Kelith, and she looked different here. And this was where she belonged gone. It was the distant, regal composure. And here was a general who had conquered star systems and bent entire civilizations too. Her will through strategic brilliance that made human military commanders look like children playing games, and her eyes were sharp and calculating as she studied the moving pieces on the display. Empress acknowledged Maya without looking up, and she said that Maya had probably been wondering why she had truly been brought here. And Maya admitted that the thought had crossed her mind more than once, and the Empress finally turned to look at her. Kelith explained that the Dravix fought with pure logic and cold calculation, and every battle was just mathematics to them, with ships and weapons and resources all factored into equations that predicted outcomes with terrifying accuracy, and they had never faced an enemy that fought with what humans called heart. The Dravix did not understand irrational courage or the willingness to sacrifice for ideals instead of just survival. And they could not comprehend why anyone would fight against impossible odds when logic said they should surrender, and that was humanity's greatest weapon. Maya felt understanding dawn cold and heavy in her chest, and she said that the Empress wanted to weaponize human tactics and use them against the Dravix. And Kelith nodded, but then she said something that surprised Maya completely. The Empress said that she wanted her daughter to survive what was coming, and her voice changed. And for the first time, Maya heard not an Empress, but a mother who was afraid of losing her child. Kelith explained that the Dravix would target Leora specifically because she was the heir, and the weakness in the Empress's armor, and in conventional warfare their projections gave Leora only a 17% chance of survival, and those odds were not acceptable. Maya asked what the odds would be with human tactics, and the Empress said they were unknown, and that was the first time in 15,000 years that an unknown variable had actually favored them, instead of being a disadvantage. But Kelith said that tactics alone were not enough, and Leora needed to understand why humans fought the way they did, and she needed to feel what humans felt when everything they loved was in danger. And logic said to give up, but they kept fighting anyway. Maya's throat felt tight, and she said that the Empress had known from the beginning that Maya and Leora would develop feelings for each other, and Kelith corrected her, said she had suspected it might happen, but she had not been certain. The Empress said that she had lived for 15,000 years, and she knew how stories began, and she had brought Maya here because Maya was a warrior who had lost friends and had fought impossible odds, and had loved and lost and kept fighting. Anyway, Kelith said that Leora needed to learn that some things were worth dying for, and Maya was supposed to teach that lesson, but what the Empress had not anticipated was how thoroughly Maya would teach it, and that she would end up teaching it to herself as well. The Empress moved closer, and her voice dropped to barely more than a whisper, and she said that Maya loved Leora, and it was not a question but a statement of fact, and Maya did not deny it because there was no point. Caliph said that Maya had been trying to protect Leora from that love because of what Varathus had warned about, and the grief that would last for millennia after. Maya died, but war was here now, and they did not have the luxury of protecting hearts anymore, and they had to use every weapon they possessed. Maya understood then, and she said that the Empress was not just teaching Leora how to fight, but why to fight, and what was worth fighting for, and what was worth fighting for, and what was worth fighting. Kelith smiled, and it was sad and ancient and full of knowledge that came from living longer than most civilizations. The Empress said that love was the most powerful weapon in the universe, and also the most dangerous one, and the question now was whether Maya was brave enough to wield it, knowing what it would cost both of them in the end. The Draviks arrived like a swarm of mechanical insects, and their ships were geometric perfection, and their formations were mathematically flawless, and every move they made was calculated to destroy the maximum number of enemy vessels with the THBs. Minimum risk to themselves. Maya stood on the command deck watching as Empress Kelith directed the Velshara fleet with cold precision and brilliant strategy. But it was not enough, and the enemy had calculated everything and accounted for every documented tactic and every historical strategy, and the numbers said they were going to win through pure statistical inevitability. Then Leora entered the command center with Varathus coiled around her shoulders in his smaller form, and everything changed in that moment, and Maya saw something new in the princess's violet eyes, and it was determination and purpose. And certain Talira said that she wanted to lead the counterattack, and her voice was steady and strong, and the Empress started to object and said that Leora's tactical training was not complete, and the probability of success was 2. But Leora interrupted her mother, and she said that probability was a Ravik's concern, and humans had taught her something better than probability, and that was possibility. And the difference between those two words was everything. Maya felt her heart stop because she understood what Leora meant, and in all the weeks they had spent together sharing stories of Earth's impossible victories and humanity's stubborn refusal to accept defeat, something had taken root in Leora, and it was not just tactics but hope. Leora looked across the command deck at Maya, and she said Maya's name softly and asked if Maya would fly with her, not as her teacher, but as her partner and her co-pilot in the entire room. When Selen Varathus shifted and grew larger until his presence dominated the command deck, and his eyes found and she saw the warning he had given her weeks ago, but she also saw something else, and it might have been resignation or it might have been permission. The dragon said that if Leora flew, then he would fly too, but Maya needed to understand that if she led the princess to death, then Varathus would make sure Maya faced it first. And Maya replied that if she led Leora to death, then she would have already fallen beside her. Varathus laughed, and it sounded like stars being born, and he said that perhaps Maya was beginning to understand them after all, and the Empress looked between them and nodded slowly and gave her permission. What happened next was chaos, given form and purpose, and Leora's flagship launched with Maya at her side and Varathus as their living weapon, and they tore into the Dravik's formations with tactics that broke every rule of proper engagement. They fought not to win by calculation, but to inspire, and every impossible maneuver and every desperate gambit was broadcast across the entire Velshara fleet, and slowly the ancient warriors who had lived for thousands of years remembered something their eternal lives had made them forget. They remembered how to fight like they had something to lose, and how to take risks that logic said were foolish, and how to protect what they loved instead of just what was strategically valuable. The turning point came when a massive Dravik's dreadnought targeted Leora's ship with enough firepower to crack a moon in half, and Maya saw the calculations and saw that their shields could not possibly hold against that kind of assault, and logic demanded immediate retreat. But Leora looked at Maya and smiled and asked if they were ready to do this together, and Maya's hand found Leora's on the control console, and their fingers intertwined, and Maya said yes, and together they held their position. Rhodas roared and exploded outward, and his dragon form expanded to shield the entire ship with his own body, and the cosmic fire that was his very essence blazed bright enough to blind sensors across 3 star systems in that moment of impossible courage when a dragon willingly put himself between his princess and death. And when 2 people who loved each other chose to stand together against overwhelming odds, something shifted in the Velshara. Fleet the ancient warriors surged forward as one, and they were no longer fighting to win by numbers. And they were fighting because someone they cared about was willing to die for them, and that meant something more than any calculation ever could. The Dravix had never encountered a variable like this in all their history, and for the first time in their calculated existence. They faced an enemy that did not make sense, and did not follow the rules, and their perfect formations began to break apart. They retreated, and it was not an organized tactical withdrawal, but actual retreat-driven by something they had never felt before, and it might have been confusion, or it might have been the first stirrings of fear in the aftermath as the command deck erupted with celebration and relief. Maya held Leora close, and felt Barathas's massive head rest gently against them both, and the dragon's voice rumbled quietly for only their ears. Said that he had been wrong to warn Maya away, and that love was worth the grief that would come after, and he could see that now, and he understood, but Maya had to promise him something important. Maya whispered that she would promise anything, and Barathas said that she had to make every moment count because he would remember them all long after Maya was gone, and he would tell the story of the human who taught an immortal princess how to truly live. The war ended not with complete surrender, but with transformation and change, and the Dravix, who had always fought with pure logic and calculation, requested negotiations because they had encountered something they could not account for in their equations. Empress Kelith surprised everyone by sending Leora as the chief negotiator with Maya at her side, and the talks were successful in ways that no one had predicted, but that all came later, and first there was a private audience in the throne room where everything had begun. Maya stood before the Empress once again, and Barathas lounged beside the throne, looking satisfied like a dragon who had seen his predictions come true, and Kelith studied Maya with those ancient silver eyes that seemed to see everything. The Empress said that Maya had taught her daughter well, and perhaps too well, and Maya started to apologize, but Kelith raised one hand and told her to be at peace, because Maya had given the Empress exactly what she had asked for. Kelith explained that Maya had taught Leora what it meant to be mortal, and to love something that could be lost, and to fight for it anyway, and to find meaning in temporary things, instead of hiding in the safety of eternity. But then the Empress said something that surprised Maya completely, and she said that she had needed that lesson for herself as well. And Maya did not understand what that meant. Kelith descended from her throne and moved with impossible grace, and she said that she was 15,000 years old and had conquered empires and outlived decay entire civilizations and watched stars be born and die, and in all that time she had been so afraid of loss that she had never truly lived. The Empress said that she had kept Leora sheltered and protected because she could not bear the thought of losing her daughter. But watching Leora fight beside Maya and seeing her truly alive for the first time in 3,000 years had taught Kelith something important. She said that safety was not the same as life, and that protecting someone from all pain and all risk also meant protecting them from all joy and all meaning, and that was not really protection at all. Maya said softly that Leora was remarkable, and the Empress agreed, and then she said that Leora loved Maya, and that Maya loved Leora, and there was no point in denying it because she had seen the way they looked at each other and moved together like they shared one heartbeat. Maya's throat felt tight, and she said that she was only human and would be dead in what was barely a heartbeat to immortal beings, and loving her would only hurt Leora in the end. The Empress said yes, and that it would hurt terribly, and one day Maya would age and die, and Leora would grieve in ways that would echo through millennia. But Kelith had learned something important about pain and joy. She said that pain was the price of joy, and she would rather have her daughter experience 50 human years of true happiness than an eternity of comfortable numbness and safety that meant nothing. Barathas stirred, and his voice held unusual warmth when he said that the Empress spoke wisdom for once, and Kelith shot the dragon an amused look, before turning back to Maya. The Empress offered Maya a choice, and she said that she could send Maya home to Earth and honor her service and let Leora remember her as the teacher who changed her life, or Maya could stay. If Maya stayed, it would not be as a guest or a teacher, but as Leora's partner and her companion in all things, and Maya said that she was not royalty and was just a lieutenant from a backwater planet, and a young Specieskeleth said that Maya was a warrior who had faced impossible odds and chosen love over fear, and that was exactly what the Empire needed and what her daughter needed. But the Empress said that Maya needed to understand what she was choosing, because she would age, while Leora remained forever young, and she would face death while Leora lived on, and it would be beautiful and terrible and brief, and it would hurt Leora more than any weapon ever could. Maya asked why the Empress would offer such a thing if it would cause so much pain, and Keleth's eyes looked almost wet when she answered. She said that she finally understood what humans had known all along, and that 50 years of love was worth an eternity of grief, and that temporary things were what made life precious, and sometimes the greatest gift you could give someone you loved was the chance to love someone who would break their heart. The door to the throne room opened, and Leora entered, and her violet eyes found Maya's immediately, and in that moment Maya saw her entire future spread out before her. She saw years of joy and laughter and exploring the galaxy hand in hand and teaching each other what it meant to be both mortal and eternal. And yes, she saw the ending too, and the inevitable goodbye that would come, but she also saw Leora's smile and felt Varathus's approval radiating through the room and sensed the Empress's blessing, and she knew what her choice would be. Some loves were meant to last forever, and others burned bright and brief,
like stars going supernova
and scattering light across the darkness. And Maya knew which kind of love this was. She said that she would stay for as long as she had, and Leora's face lit up like dawn breaking over a world that had never known the sun. The Empress smiled, and it was bittersweet and ancient and proud, and she said that Maya was welcome to the family, and that the Velshara Empire had stood for 1,000,000 years on the foundation of eternity, and now they would see what they could build on the foundation of a human lifetime. Instead, Rothus rumbled. His approval and cosmic fire curled from his nostrils like a blessing, and Leora crossed the throne room to take Maya's hands, and their fingers intertwined, and their foreheads touched. Maya thought she finally understood what the Empress had been teaching all along, and it was not Leora who needed to learn about mortality, but immortality that needed to learn about being human.